So hello everyone and welcome to today's workshop on author planning and goal setting. I'm Dahlia and I've been a self-published author for 10 years now. And over the years, I've tried out a lot of different ways to plan and set goals. Today, I want to share some of my insights that I've gained over the years, things that have really made a difference in how I approach planning and goal setting. Not everything I share may work for you, but I hope you will take away a few ideas that can help you to build a sustainable author career, since from my experience, good planning and goal settings are a key to making that happen. Now imagine this. It's something that I often feel. You sit down at your desk, open your laptop and stare at the blank page. You know that you want to write, but where do you even start? Maybe you've been working on a novel for months or years, but you feel stuck. Or maybe you jump from one exciting idea to the next without ever finishing anything. Does it sound familiar? I can tell you, as much as I love planning, I have experienced both of these things in my life. So you're definitely not alone. This happens to many writers and we're so full of creativity and passion. But when it comes to actually making progress, things often get a little bit messy. Life gets in the way, self-doubt creeps in, and before we know it, another year has passed. And that book we meant to finish is still sitting in a half-written draft. I mean, Sudowrite's really helping with at least getting a written draft, but then there's still editing and other things that we have to do. And I think that's why most of us are here today. This workshop isn't about writing tips or craft techniques, it's about getting things done. It's about setting yourself up for success by having a clear vision, structured goals, and a realistic plan. You might have heard this quote here before. If a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable. By this great, I think, Greek philosopher Seneca. And what does it mean for us as writers? It means that no matter how talented or motivated we are, if we don't know where we are headed, we'll drift aimlessly. We might write a little here and there, but we don't finish anything. Or we'll set big, ambitious goals and then burn out trying to reach them. This is why planning matters. But before we dive in, let's get one thing straight. Planning is not about restricting your creativity. It's not about forcing yourself into rigid deadlines that make writing feel like a chore. It's about giving yourself a direction so that you're not just writing, but actually making progress. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. So now there's one common mistake I see a lot of writers make. They focus on the time management first, like I need to find more time to write, but they haven't actually set clear goals or made a plan. And without goals, time management won't help because you're not managing anything concrete. On the other hand, you can set all the goals in the world, but if you don't make a plan to reach them, they'll just sit here on a vision board, like the one that James shared in this chat. That looks quite familiar. And all the goals are collecting dust. You can think of it like this, that your vision is your destination, your goals are the milestones along the way, your plan is the roadmap that gets you there. And yes, time management plays a role. That's why we'll talk about this tomorrow. At least the people who also will join me on my Sunday time management workshop. But it's just one piece of the puzzle. That's why today we're starting with a big picture. We're writing vision and working our way down to specific actionable steps. Now, everyone, close your eyes for a moment and imagine it's 5 years from now. You wake up, start your day, and what does your writing life look like? Are you sitting in a cozy coffee shop? Working on your next novel? Are you signing copies of your book at a packed bookstore event? Maybe you're a full-time freelancer choosing your own clients and projects, or maybe you're simply writing for yourself, finally finishing that story that's been in your heart for years. Whatever it is, hold onto that image, because that's your vision, your personal definition of writing success. And if you don't define success for yourself, someone else will define it for you. So you have to think about what does success as a writer look like for you and not for anyone else. A lot of writers struggle with motivation, self-doubt, and feeling stuck. And one of the biggest reasons is that they don't actually know what they're working towards. Without a clear vision, it's easy to get distracted or to compare yourself to other writers or to chase goals that don't actually make you happy. Let me share a little story of a friend of mine. We know each other now for, I think, 10 years. And for 8 of these 10 years, she was working on the same novel. She was always very productive, but she didn't have a clear vision. She didn't have clear goals. And so whenever some other opportunity came along, the novel that she wanted to finish and that she wanted to publish was put onto the back burner, and she jumped on every opportunity, whether it aligned with what she actually wanted to make out of her life or not. But that changed when she actually sat down and built a vision board and thought about where she wanted to go with her life and made sure that all the goals and plans would align with this. This is why we're starting with vision before we even talk about goals. Because if you don't know where you're going, you will never even get there. There's no one-size-fits-all definition of what this writing success will look like. What works for one writer might not work for another. Here are a few examples of writing visions. See if any of those visions resonate with you, because it's important that it's something that's true for you and feels right. Since another thing I've seen often is that people chase other people's visions and not their own. But one of those visions would be the publishing dream. This is like you want to see your book on bookstore shelves, sign a deal with a big publisher, and maybe even hit the bestseller list. You focus on writing high quality manuscripts, querying agents, and working within the traditional publishing industry. That's not really my work, my vision for my life, since I'm too impatient. And that's why I prefer the indie author path. I love, and maybe you also love, the idea of full creative control, publishing your books on your own terms and building a direct relationship with your readers. You focus on writing, marketing, and learning the business of self-publishing. But there's also the writing for joy approach. Maybe success for you isn't about publishing at all. Maybe you write because it makes you happy, because it's a way to express yourself. Your focus is on building a sustainable, enjoyable writing habit without the pressure of external validation. And that's just as valid as any other writing vision. And of course, these aren't the only options. Your vision might be a mix of these or something entirely different. The key is knowing what feels right for you. And now that you have an idea of what success looks like for you, or maybe may look for you, let's make it a bit more tangible. A vision board is a powerful tool to turning these abstract dreams into something you can actually see and connect with. And I'd like to show you a little example of what this may look like in Sudowrite's canvas. Because now I have to go to the right window. With Sudowrite, we have this neat little canvas where we can have our little cards with our dreams. And then we can generate pictures to illustrate it a bit more. Because for me, if it's just words, it's not It's not that strong as if I can see this little tropical beach with my little house, because that would be something that would make me really happy if I could at some point in my life have this life as a writer. And with AI, we have the opportunity to just really generate the images that capture our visions. Now, not all of these really look a lot like me, but I think they still give an idea of what you can do to visualize your visions a bit. For me, it's, I just saw, yes, I can demonstrate how you do this. Does anyone have a nice idea for another writing vision? Do you have a vision for yourself you'd like to add to this board? Oh, a magical cottage in the woods. Cottage in the woods. Then you just type this in the card and then you can hit visualize and it starts the magic. This is always taking a little moment, but let's see why this is working. We can add the other card with your book made into a movie. And then you get this. That truly looks magical. I'm not sure how attainable this is in the real world, but I mean, maybe. But it looks kind of cool. Oh, and this is like my book. Oh God, you know that. I'm not trying to read what they said, but we're at the movie set, which is also quite cool image to have. And that way you can build your own little vision board. And that's a way that I like to use Canvas, since we can just build our little dreams and make them something really to aim for. No. And as we've seen, let's get back for a moment. There are some big like series adaptations, movies, musicals, or Hugo Award. I mean, that's not that realistic that I will land a deal for an HBO series. But in your vision, it's totally fine to dream big. The important thing is that your vision motivates you. And if big, lofty dreams feel rather more intimidating for you, then it's also perfectly okay to start smaller and have more attainable visions. What matters is that you have something to guide you. Now that we've talked about the importance of having a vision for where you want to go, the next step is turning that vision into concrete goals. Because also a vision is just a dream until you break it down into more actionable steps. So let's dive back into how to do that. So think of your vision as your destination, but without clear goals, a vision always stays more like a dream. Since you have to figure out the way to bridge the gap between where you are now and where you want to be. And that's where the goals come in. They turn your dreams into actionable steps. They are the checkpoints on your map that lead you to your destination. Without them, it's like setting out on a road trip without a GPS, which you may do. And I know people who are really good with directions without a GPS, but I get lost immediately if I try to go somewhere without Google Maps. So even I, with like no sense of orientation, eventually get somewhere, but it will take a lot longer. And probably you'd get lost along the way a couple of times. So goals give your writing the direction, structure, and a sense of progress, but not all of your goals are created equal. Let's now talk about the two main types of goals and why both of them are important. Now, Lisa, it's not just you. It would take a long time to tell all the stories of me getting horribly lost. It's embarrassing. I couldn't live anymore without Google Maps. I don't know how I lived before. But let's get back to our goals that help us a lot. There are two types of goals which I like to talk about now: process and outcome goals. A lot of writers make the mistake of only setting outcome goals like publish my book by next year. These outcome goals are focused on the results, and it's great to have them, but without also having process goals, it's like saying you want to run a marathon without ever training for it. So the outcome goals is the final result you want to achieve, and the process goal is the consistent actions you take to get there. It's something like write 500 words per day, or write a chapter per day, or sending out one query letter per month, whatever you want to do that's focused on the consistent like habits that you have. The key takeaway here is that process goals build habits. The outcome goals, on the other hand, give you something to work toward. So you need both for sustainable progress, and they work hand in hand. And so that our goals are more than just wishful thinking, but actually doable, it's good to turn them into SMART goals. I think a lot of you have already heard about this acronym. SMART stands for specific, like what exactly do you want to accomplish? Measurable, how will you track your progress? Achievable, like keep your goals realistic. They should also be relevant and aligned with your writing vision. Remember what I said about my friend who would jump at every opportunity for a writing gig, even if it had nothing to do with what they said they wanted to do. So that's something I always check before I set a goal. Is this actually leading me into the right direction? And they should also be time bound, since, well, while I agree with, I'm not sure if it was Douglas Adams or Terry Pratchett who said that they like the sound of pushing deadlines flying by, but if I have a deadline, that helps me a lot to at least motivate me to get something done, even if it's only 3 days before the deadline. Now let's look at a few example transformations for SMART goals. You shouldn't just say, I want to finish my book. It should be like something like, I will write 1,000 words every weekday for the next 3 months to complete my first draft. Something that's very concrete and time-bound, and you actually know what you're supposed to do. Like, I want to finish my book is such a huge task that it's, for a lot of people, like really daunting. Something else could be, I want to build an audience, which is a great goal, but it's also very vague. So it'd be rather something like, I will post 1 piece of writing on my blog every Friday and engage with 5 readers per week. Now, I'm not sure if this is still the right way to build an audience, because that's always changing, but I'm sure you get the gist of this. So now that we have set some goals, or I have an idea how to set goals, the next step is to figure out how to actually follow through on them. And that's where the planning comes in. Because a goal without a dream is just like a vision. Oh, wrong. Because a goal without a plan is just a dream, just like with visions. Yeah. Yeah, we also come to habit trackers is also something. Okay, so let's hop over. So now, even if you set a SMART goal, it can still feel huge and overwhelming. Like, okay, I want to finish the novel this year, and I said I want to write this and this words. But awesome. And where do I even start? Figure out how much I have to do each month to get there. Because if I say what I said before with deadlines, if you start 3 days before the deadline, it's not really helping either. But that's where I love reverse engineering. It's one of the most effective ways to plan for me. So instead of asking, what should I do today? You start at the finish line and work backwards. You ask, if I want to achieve this goal in 6 months, what needs to happen along the way? I like to think of it like climbing a mountain. You're not standing at the bottom thinking, oh no, I have to get all the way up there. Instead, you just focus on the next checkpoint. What's the next small step that gets you closer? So you would set milestones for. I like to have quarterly goals that I then break down to monthly goals and then weekly milestones. Since this really helps to prevent overwhelm if you break the bigger goals into smaller goals. I thought I had an example on this thing, but I think it looks like I forgot to put an example on this slide. So I'll tell you what this. I shouldn't be looking at the chat, because Hobbit trackers would be really cute, John. So reverse engineering would look like something like, first you publish your novel in a year plan down into something like finish the first draft by April, then revise and edit by July. By August, send it to beta readers. By October, final revisions. And in December, you get ready to publish or query. when you see it like this, it's not just one massive goal, but a series of smaller concrete steps. Another way would be to break it down in a quarter, like outline and write 25,000 words in the first quarter, then write another 25,000 words in the second quarter. And on the third quarter, you finish the draft and start revisions. The fourth quarter is then when you edit and prep for publication. This way, it's more manageable than just having the goal to finish your novel in a year. But reverse engineering isn't perfect because there's one pitfall, a mistake that I have made countless times. And that is, even though I know by now, I should know better, is underestimating the time that stuff takes to do. We often set very ambitious goals, but forget to account for real life responsibilities. Or we're too optimistic how long stuff will take to do. That's why realistic planning is so important. So while you may want to finish your book at a certain time, it's also important to check whether you actually have enough time to do so. So the first step would be to estimate how long each of the tasks on your way takes. How long does it take you to write 1,000 words? How much time do you need for editing? And then you would have to compare this to your actual schedule. Do you actually have enough hours to do this each week? Or do you need to adjust your goal to fit to reality? To show you what I mean, let's take a look at a calendar for the next quarter that I prepared. And I hope it's not too small to read. Let's see. Yeah. This is an example how you could reverse engineer your goal of writing and publish a 75,000 word novel by June 2025. Like you have your release. Now, where's my, yeah. You have your release day, and from there, you have like, it's called estimated how long each step should take or could take with this schedule, and came out with small milestones for every Sunday. But that's just how I would love for this to look. The question is, how much time do I actually need? Because that's like more important than any goal setting that just looks at days on the calendar. Like in this example, to make it easy to count, I said that for 75,000 words, we need 75 hours to write them and 75 hours to edit them, and then 25 hours for final revisions. And I just realized that I did the math wrong because that's not 150 hours. But okay. That's also a thing you should be realistic about. It's mathematics. But let's just pretend for the sake of the presentation that it's 150 hours or the rest won't work. Now that we know how much time we need, the next thing to look at is how would our ideal writing week look like? This little pink boxes are the times that I blocked out of my day for writing. We would also talk about, if you come to time management, we will talk in more detail about this. But we block this out every Sunday, Monday, Friday, and Saturday. We have 3 hours that are just for writing. You know, those stupid days with our day job, we only have 1 hour in the evenings. So now, if every week were an ideal week, we'd have 13 weeks and 15 hours per week, and that is 195 hours. And thankfully, even the 175 hours would fit into this. But not every week is ideal, is it? Here you see days marked in the calendar where I already know that I likely won't be able to write because of stuff like my sister getting married, or we have Easter holidays, or I'm on holiday. So, I mean, it's not absolutely impossible. I know myself, so I likely will do a little writing on the day, but I can't count them as full writing days. So I just noticed that this is not the right image here. There should be little numbers. But so just believe me, the actual writing time available is 138 hours. But we need 150, 75 even, which we just pretend. And Lisa, I did use a template in Canva for the calendar, but you could as well, I think there are, I'm not sure what the site is, but there are websites where you can print out blank calendars for quarters or other. Yeah, Google is also one that you could use. But I just love taking templates from Canva because there are just a lot of things to choose from. But yeah, we see we definitely don't have enough time available. Yeah. This was the version of the picture that should have been on the slide before, where I meticulously logged all the writing hours that I had for all the days, because then you can go backwards or forwards and look how much do you actually need for finishing your first draft. If you let us just pretend and hope that I did the math right for this one, that we would have our 75 hours for the first draft by May 31st. And then we would be finishing with editing, hopefully in July 6th. And if it's also something we should do is add in some buffer time for beta readers. Like if we go back, is it? I was just very optimistic that my beta readers would get back so that I would be able to finish the final revisions in like 2 weeks, which may be not that realistic, depending on their schedule. If we add this in, we would be able to finish the final revisions by July 27th, and then we would have to postpone everything by a month and a half, but it would be a schedule that would actually work without us overworking us. So I hope this quick demo gave you a better idea of how to reverse engineer your goals and how to just plan along the way. And now would be use a calculator for the math to be sure, and to plan in extra buffer time in case you're not that good at math. I mean, theoretically, I'm very good at maths, but not calculus, like calculating stuff. But anyway, are there any questions so far in the chat that I may have missed? Oh, yes. Sickness and life, they love to derail you when you're on a roll. That's correct, Nicole. Which is also a reason that I often tend to plan in a few buffer days where I like here, I think this should be Easter holidays. On the Easter holidays, I'm at my mom's place and I know I don't have full writing days, but I have a little writing day so that I can build up a little bit of a buffer.
There was a comment up here. Not sure if she meant it for you, a suggestion for another class, or just in general. A course on how to build an audience for beginner writers would be awesome. So that was suggested up there.
Oh, yeah. That's a great suggestion, and I'd love to take this course from someone who knows how to do this, because it's likely the one thing I'm not good at.
I bet we have somebody or a few somebodies
Yeah, I'm
in
pretty
our
sure.
little group.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we will find someone to do this.
Yes, we'll get on that. Lisa asked, do you have any tips on how not to jump from project to project and actually finish something?
It's really hard because for some people, it's like in their personality that they like to jump between projects. I'm also guilty with this because there's this shiny new toy that's easily distracting me. What helps me is to get accountability and to have someone who's waiting. Oh yeah, and stay away from all rabbit holes, manors, right? But you know, teaching classes at Sudowrite is really bad for staying away because every month I create new projects for class reasons, and then I have even more ideas. So don't follow my example. Don't experiment too much. Although on the other hand, that also helps you a lot learning to work with Sudowrite. But yeah, I think accountability is the thing that you personally the best. When I know that someone waiting for a project, I'm more likely to follow through and finish this project instead of jumping to the next shiny thing.
May I add, I think it also goes back to what you started with, your vision. Like when your why is
Yes.
strong enough, like that kind of, if you focus on it, for instance, if you got to pay the bills, you got to make this much money to survive. I mean, buckle up and do it. But having that very strong vision or your why, I think can really help
Yeah.
push you.
Yeah, that also helps a lot. So yes, Lisa, I would say having an accountability partner helps a lot. I think I'm not sure actually if I'm talking about that today or tomorrow, that like tracking your progress. Oh, I think it's even the next slide. Yeah, tracking your progress is also something that motivates me. And that's also something where you can use accountability partners to. Oh, Stacey, I've seen you've raised your hand.
So another suggestion, and this is going kind of in the opposite way, is if you know that you are going to bounce between projects, allot time for that. On your main project, that should obviously take up the majority of your work time, but or make it a reward system. If you write
Yes.
1,000 words on your main project today, then you get to spend a few hours on your passion project.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like rewards are really motivating and rewarding. So something you could do is like having, I'm not sure how you call this, like a stamp thing, where you have, if you have like so many stamps working on your, like the main project, you get to play a little bit on your passion project. That's also something I reward myself with to stay motivated. That if I check off enough little boxes that I get a little fun to play with. So, but that's really, yeah, gold star method. Leading into a tracking process, which is something that helps with the execution of everything. And it's a bit type, what kind of personality type you, whether this helps you or not. But for me, it keeps me really motivated and accountable, and has the effect that if you track everything you do when you write the novel, this also helps you to get better at estimating how long things actually take. Because let's be honest, most of us just underestimate that part and are a bit too optimistic how long we actually need for something. And there are some ways you can track your progress. You can use word count trackers. Or writing logs, accountability partners, as we mentioned. And it's also important to track your progress and not beat yourself up if it's not as perfect as you planned, since every step in the right direction counts. Some weeks just will be slow, and that's totally okay. The point is that to notice what's working and to keep going, and not to beat yourself up if you miss a day or two. And this is a little example of a writing journal that I wanted to show you, because that's the kind of journal that I usually keep. I actually wanted to show you the paper version, but as I mentioned at the beginning, I met my mom, and therefore not everything went as planned, and this neat little journal is at home sitting on my desk. And you can't imagine how I'm feeling without my planner and my journal. It's like someone chopped off a limb. But I like to sit down every evening and jot down how many words did I write or edit that day, how many pomodori did I work. The Pomodoro method is something I'll talk about in the time management workshop tomorrow, but in short, a Pomodoro is like a 25-minute unit of focused work. And I like to track this to get a feel how long I used to work on this project that day. And what I also like to reflect is, how did my writing go today? What worked, what didn't work? If I encountered any kind of problem or had some sort of realization of something that worked really well that day. And that's like one way you can track your success. That can help you with executing your plans in the long run. So the next thing I would love to talk about is what hinders our execution. Some of the universal writing struggles and challenges that we have. Because let's be honest, planning is often the easier part. Like, I often feel very motivated when I've planned something. I've got a vision, clear goals, and made a plan. But what happens when I sit down to write? And then, I mean, thanks to Sudowrite, often something happens, but it's still oftentimes happens that I don't really get into the flow. And that there's suddenly something like this urge to reorganize your bookshelf or check social media. And then days turn into weeks and your goals start slipping away. And yeah, does that sound familiar for anyone here? Because this is also something that happens to everyone. Even the most disciplined writers struggle with procrastination, burnout, self-doubt, and overwhelm. The 4 horsemen of writing struggles, as I like to call them. The difference between writers who succeed and those who give up isn't talent. It's knowing how to get back on track when things go wrong. So let's use the last minutes of this workshop to talk about 4 of the biggest obstacles that derail writers and some tactics to overcome them. Let's talk first about procrastination, or as I like to call it, the I write later trap, because I still can write after doing the dishes or other things. And why does it happen? Often it's because we're overwhelmed by a big task and we don't know where to start. Sometimes it can be fear that what we're writing won't be good enough. And sometimes we're just sitting there waiting for inspiration to magically show up. But here's the thing, you don't need to wait for inspiration to write, you need to write to find inspiration. So what can we do about all this? The biggest difference for me was using the 5-minute rule. Just tell yourself, I only have to work on this project for 5 minutes. That's it. 5 minutes isn't long. And often the problem is just getting started. So even once you've got yourself to sit down for the first 5 minutes, you probably keep going. And even if you didn't, you at least have made a little bit of progress. Another thing that helps is lowering the bar. You don't need to write a perfect chapter. Just aim to write 200 messy words. Give yourself the permission to write badly. You can always fix it later. And finally, what also helps me a lot is using accountability hacks, as we mentioned before. You can set a timer, find a writing buddy and check in with each other. Make some small public commitments, like posting a daily word count update somewhere, maybe on the Discord would be a place to do this. These are like 3 tactics that helped me most of the time when it came to overcoming procrastination. The next obstacle would be burnout. Because sometimes the problem isn't procrastination. Sometimes it's just exhausted. Because you've overloaded yourself with unrealistic goals. Like you expect yourself to write like a machine just because you're writing now with the help of an AI. It doesn't mean that you just can write on without taking breaks. That's just not sustainable. And if you slide into burnout, it often feels, when you sit down for writing, more like it's a chore that you do not want to do. And that is often caused by you not giving yourself enough mental recovery time. Writing, even if it's fun, takes energy. And you need to refill that very regularly. So first thing that's important is to schedule breaks. There are a lot of people who preach that you should write every single day, but that's not realistic for everyone. So if you're feeling like exhausted about the idea to write, just give yourself an attention and rest day and don't feel guilty about it. Something that also helps me is to switch writing modes, because even if I'm exhausted, writing it's also something that gives me energy and joy. So I still want to do something. And if it feels too exhausting for me to draft stuff, I like to spend some time brainstorming or outlining or working on world building. Something that's still progress, but in a way that's gentler on my brain. And then refill your creative well and balance your writing with inspiration. Read a book, take a walk, watch a movie. Do things that inspire you and give your brain something new to work with. And there's a really important point. Sometimes when we start procrastinating, it's not just about avoiding writing. It can be a warning sign that your creative well is empty. And it's like your brain screaming that it wants to be filled with some like content. So if you catch yourself procrastinating more than usual, pause and ask yourself whether you need a break or you need to recharge. Because if you're running on empty and keep pushing, it will only make things worse. So if burnout or you're feeling on the brink of burnout is something you struggle with, I highly recommend checking out Becca Syme's book, Dear Writer, You're in Burnout. No, Dear Writer, Are You in Burnout? Which is a great book on burnout and working with your brain and not against it. She has some fantastic insights on burnout and how you can get yourself out of the burnout pit. I'll just put the name of the book in the chat. That reminds me that I think I didn't post the class material, did I?
I did not see anything.
Yeah, then I forgot about that. But first, the book recommendation. I love all of Becca's books. She has some more on similar themes, and that's super helpful just to get to know yourself better and how you can write sustainably. And here's the class document. Which has the most important key takeaways and some like questions to work with so that you can come away with a vision and your goals and a plan. When I created the material for the class, I first thought that I would love to make it more interactive, but then again, I realized that a vision is not something that you come up in 5 minutes. It's something that you have to take some time to think about it so that it's really your own. And therefore, I thought I'd rather give you some homework instead of, I don't know, throw you in breakout rooms and force you to talk with the other attendees. But since we're already always on the hour, but I still have a few slides left. Let's head back into it. Our next little topic. Managing self-doubt, because I'm pretty sure that's also something everyone here knows. This lovely inner critic that always shows up uninvited and has way too much to say. Why does self-doubt creep in? First, we compare ourselves to other writers, especially to people who are already published or more experienced. We see like their end results and compare them with the stuff that we are just working on, not keeping into consideration how much work they also did for their overnight success. Something else is that we can get stuck in perfectionism. I'm really guilty on this. Like this thought that every sentence has to be flawless from the start. And this can make it impossible to even begin. And then this feeling of not being good enough to tell the story we want to tell. The thing is, everyone struggles with this. At least everyone I talked about this. Even best-selling authors have this self-doubt creeping in, that along with this imposter syndrome, that someone will find out that they actually don't know what they're doing. So the key is learning how to quiet that voice enough to keep writing anyway. So the fix for this would be to shift your mindset. First thing would be to separate your writing and editing. First drafts are allowed to be messy. And you can give yourself permission to write badly. This may not work for everyone, because I know people who just can not edit. They just have to make it perfect in the one way. And if that's something that works for you, that's fine. But if you find yourself struggling with self-doubt, you could just give it a try. If maybe writing a messy first draft and then editing helps you. A second tip is to create a confidence file where you save nice things people have said about your writing. That can be emails from beta readers, comments, feedback, anything that reminds you that, hey, I can do this. And then you take this file and read it when the doubt starts creeping in. And finally, remember why you started, what your vision is, that your goal is to tell a story and not to be perfect. At least I'd hope that's your goal, because as much as I hate to say this, it's impossible to be perfect in the long run. I mean, I still would like to be, but if we're realistic, perfect is just unattainable. So we just should go back to that feeling of wanting to tell a story and to accept that sometimes good enough is good enough. Oh, Dahlia, why are you sobbing? Did I make you cry? I hope not.
You told her perfection was unattainable.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm also really, really perfectionist. And it was what hard lesson to learn, that I can always strive for perfection, but I have to keep in mind that it's not something that actually possible to attain. Right. And yeah, that's a great quote. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good, because that's also something. I know people who have written great books, but they're still unpublished because they still think that the books aren't perfect enough to publish them. I'm just like, oh, but I want to read that. Or like, I'd rather put them on my shelf. But yeah, progress over perfection. So lastly, I'm going a little bit over, but lastly, let's talk about beating overwhelm, because overwhelm, honestly, it's at the root of so many problems. And that's why it deserves its own spotlight. Overwhelm can come in a lot of different forms. it can be tied directly to your writing goals. Like when you look at everything you want to accomplish and think, how am I ever going to do all that? But overwhelm can also come from things that are completely outside of our control, from the world around us, from life stuff that weighs you down. And while neither you nor I can change the state of the world, unfortunately, what we can do is to minimize noise and distraction wherever possible. But when it comes to your writing goals, you are in control. And there are real steps you can take to manage that overwhelm and avoid burning out. Because here's what happens if you try to do everything all at once. You'll burn out fast. And I say this as someone who's a high achiever. Even if you're a very disciplined high achiever, you can't do everything. I'm sorry to say this. So instead of trying to do all the things, I want you to focus on what actually moves you forward. Yes. And that means that you prioritize tasks that actually move the needle. And you can just use a simple method to do this by use a 3-tier prioritization. I hate this word, prioritization system. By having must-do tasks, which are critical tasks. For us, this is writing, revising, deadlines. Then there are should-do tasks, like tasks that are important but more flexible, like research and marketing. And some nice-to-do tasks, which are bonus tasks like brainstorming, wall building extras. This nice-to-do stuff that can be rewards that refill your well, but you shouldn't put your focus on like brainstorming new projects or random ideas when you actually should be writing. Since at least for myself, I can say that if I'm doing some nice to do things, when there are still must do things on my to-do list, I always have this nagging thought in the back of my head. So I try to follow this system to figure out what to focus on and what can wait a little longer. So before we move on, I'm sorry for going a bit over the time. It's, I think, only 3 or 4 slides left. So, but I just don't want to kick you out like this. And the key message for this is something that I think it was Stacy who dropped it in the chat, that we should go for progress over perfection and keep moving. Even small steps really matter. And bring us closer to our goals.
I tried to get her to do that other quote that I always forget, but it like completely changed my view on everything. And it was what you talked about, the first draft can be messy. And then Stacey always mentions that quote, I think from Terry Pratchett. First draft is just you telling yourself the story. For whatever reason, that just unlocked a world of difference for me.
Yeah, that's true. Because I also always wanted to have a perfect first draft so that I don't have to go through editing. But in the end, it's easier and really gets me to work if I'm not aiming to have it perfect on the first try. But so, all right. We've covered a lot today. And I'm happy that so many people are still here with me now. So you've learned how to think about your writing vision, how to set clear goals. Set clear goals, how to create a plan, and how to deal with some of the most common challenges that can get in the way. That's already a lot to take in. But let's be honest, just knowing all this isn't enough. What really makes a difference is what you do next. So before we wrap up, I want to give you the chance to take what you've learned and turn it into a plan. Something concrete that you can actually work on after this session. But since we're already over the hour, I'd rather make this your homework. So maybe make a little screenshot of the last slide. There are like 3 simple steps I want you to work on after the session. One is to commit to a 3-month goal. Think about everything we've discussed. What's one writing goal you want to achieve in the next 3 months? Try to be as specific as possible, something that's measurable so that you know when you've reached it. It could be finish the first draft of your novel by writing 1,000 words a day, or revising like 10 chapters of your manuscript, by working on 1 per week. Something that's really tangible and also realistic. And once you have your goal, identify the first action step. You have to break it down so that you know where you need to start. You don't have to create the whole plan if that's just too much to think, but just the one next step that will move you forward. Like if your goal is to finish a draft, decide on a daily or weekly word count target. Or if your goal is to revise, pick the chapter you'll start with. Since big goals can feel overwhelming, but every big achievement starts with small, doable steps. And lastly, find an accountability system. Sticking to a goal is much easier when you don't do it alone. Accountability doesn't have to mean pressure. It can be as simple as having someone to check in with. Some ways to do that would be find a writing buddy to check in with weekly, make a public commitment, set up a progress tracker like the writing journal I shared, and set small deadlines and rewards that you give yourself so that you have something to look forward to. Since we have a really great community over at Discord, that may be a good place to find a writing buddy or to make your public commitment in the writing channel. Oh yes, work in progress. That's also something true for a lot of my projects. So, but all right. We're already 10 minutes over, but before we finish, I want to give you a moment for any final questions or thoughts. I know we talked a lot of things. That was a lot of content for 1 hour. But if there's anything you're still unsure about or want to share, now's the time. Ah, yeah, that's a great thought, John. Like comparing your writing plan to a meal plan so that you don't have to think about what you have to do every day. I'm also someone who loves to have meal plans, to plan everything out in advance so that you know how to work with this. Thank you. So if there are no more questions, I want to take a moment to thank my co-hosts, Nicole and Stacy, and also I've seen John chiming in quite a few times in the chat. I really appreciate your support. And of course, thank you all for being here today, for taking this hour and a bit more than an hour to focus on your writing goals. I know it's not always easy to carve out time for this kind of work, and I hope you're leaving with something useful and actionable. If you found this session helpful, I'd really be happy if you could leave a short rating or review. That helps me know what worked and what you'd like more of, and whether we should offer something like this again. You'll get a link in a follow-up email for that, so if you have a moment later, I'd really appreciate it. With that said, I want to thank you all one last time. Take care and happy writing.